Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. Chef has been our sponsor for the podcast from ChefConf here in Austin, Texas. Learn more about Habitat, Inspec, and Chef's focus on continuous automation at chef.io. Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack here at ChefConf in Austin, Texas with Nathen Harvey. Hey, Nathen, how are you?
I'm doing so great. How are you, Alex?
Great, and you are Vice President of Community Development.
That's correct.
At Chef.
Yep.
And I'm going to ask you just a very broad question.
Sure.
So, what does community mean to you now?
Yeah, what does community mean to me now? Well, look.
Because community means a lot of different things to me now than it did a year ago or 2 years or 5 years ago.
Sure. I think a lot of people, when they hear the word community, the first thing they think of is open source. And for a lot of people, that's where it kind of stops, starts, and ends. That's community to them, open source. To me, I really look at community as a group of humans, a group of people that come together and have some common interests, some common goals, and that's it. So community could mean that we care about the business that we're working in. It could mean that we care about the industry that we're working in. It could mean that we worship in a similar way, right? All of these are communities. It could be the PTA, that's the community. But the thing about it is that we have a common understanding, common goals. We work towards those together. And as a community, we're really interested in helping one another out, helping one another succeed, because we know that we either, as a community, will succeed together or fail together.
So how do you translate that into your work, into your everyday job?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of ways to translate that into your everyday job. And the first thing is that you have to have that common understanding or that common goal, that common appreciation of what are we working towards. And that's, to me, that's really interesting, because if, let's say we're working together at Capital One, we care about very different things than if we're working together at Chef or than if we're working together at the New Stack, right? Our customers are very different, yet at the same time, we may have people in each one of those organizations that have very similar roles of marketing, roles of engineering. Those people can be a community that cuts across those organizations as well. So I think when it comes to how do you bring community into work, the first thing is you have to care about the work that your company or your organization is doing. I think you see this a lot very easily within, say, a nonprofit organization. You don't go and work at a nonprofit organization because you want to be the highest paid engineer on the planet. That's not why you go there. You go there because of the mission. And I think that we need to bring that same sort of mission-driven ideals to the work that we do. And for me, that's a lot of where community starts.
So, Chef is an open source company.
Sure.
How do you measure community? How do you make sense of it?
Yeah, so
how do you prove that to your boss and to the community itself?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to what we do in technology and when it comes to running good businesses, it's important that all of our metrics are shared and easily visible to everyone within the organization. So if you go into the Chef headquarters, you'll see a map on the wall, and it's a heat map, and it shows it's the global worldwide heat map. And anytime someone in the Chef community gives someone else in the Chef community a hug, a little pin drop lights up on the map. And so we just look at all the pin drops around the map, and that's our metric for community. How many hugs are being given?
It's a hugometric. What do you guys call it?
It's a hugometric. That's exactly right. Of course, I'm making all of that up. We do not have a map. We don't go out there and measure the hugs. But man, wouldn't that be incredible if we could put a little sensor on everyone?
I was so sold. I just accepted that. I'm like, whoa, hugs, huh?
Hugs, yeah. It's a hugometer. The more hugs, the better. That's what it's all about.
I love it.
No, but in a little bit more serious tone or serious bent, 100%. What we look at when we think about community, look, we're a software company. We want you using our products. So the way that we'll measure community is, what does adoption look like? How many people understand and are using our software on a daily basis? What sort of goals and outcomes are they driving? What sort of success are they having? Those are the measures that matter. And look, measuring that stuff can be very difficult, right?
Yeah.
You're an open source community.
Right.
People can use your software without ever telling you. So
Right.
how do we know? How do we know? Part of what we do is we go out to events like this. We go to ChefConf, we go to other events within the technical community, and we talk to people.
Yeah.
We get a feeling of what it's like to be in this community.
Right. Do you then bring that info back to product development? How do you bring it back?
Absolutely. So there's a number of ways that comes back. Like, of course, we bring product features and suggestions back not only to product development, but we also share those globally within the community, because it is an open source company. The open source software gets built by the developers. So we don't necessarily need to go to product management to get permission to build a feature or to get guidance on how to build a feature. As a community, we can just go and build that feature. But of course, those features also play right back into our own product development efforts within Chef.
So how has that helped shape, for example, Habitat?
Yeah, so the way that's helped shape Habitat is we look not only at how people are using Chef, we look at the pain that they're having when they use Chef. So when you use Chef to deploy applications, it's not a very clean process. You can totally do it, and you have to be really good at Chef, and it's amazing what people have built, but we also can look at that and say that's painful because we're coming at it from the wrong approach. So we then can turn it on its head and think about other things. And then, of course, the thing that's also true is we don't live in a vacuum. Like, we don't go out and say, just tell me how you're using Chef. We want to hear how you're using all kinds of other technologies. So we see and are participants in what's happening in the container space, what's happening in application pipelines. We start to understand all of that, and then that we bring back internally and help strive.
So what have you learned about community management, and how it really does make a difference?
Yeah, so look, early on in my career, I was a technologist, right?
Right.
My last job before I came to Chef, I was managing infrastructure. And the thing that I learned about community there was that the open source community, and specifically the Chef community, is so welcoming and encouraging. I became a better professional through interactions with the community. And for me, as the Vice President of Community Development, I just want to foster that feeling and let all of us lift up one another and make our lives better. That's what I'm all about.
So do you have a team of people who work with you?
I do have a team of people that work with me, and it's divided up a couple of different ways. So on the one hand, I have a team of open source engineers, and their job is to make it easier, faster, more delightful for people that do not work at Chef to contribute to our open source projects. So they're focused really on the healthiness of what does it mean to run an open source project that's successful. And then I have other people that are focused more on our adoption goals. So people that maybe typically would be called product evangelists or evangelists. We will go out and work with our customers, understand how they're using Chef, help them use Chef better, talk about adoption, and do training with them. And of course, both of those roles overlap a little bit, so we all get to do a little bit of everything.
So your job primarily then is to kind of just making sure that information is coming back and it's coherent, and that people then can use it.
That's right. And then also just to keep my finger on the pulse of the community. Are we being healthy as a community? Are we continuing to be welcoming as a community? And are we evolving properly as a community? If you look at sort of the history of any open source community, we're kind of fortunate because we see sort of a couple of different communities right now in different spots in their life cycle, if you will. So if you look at Chef, 6 years ago, the community was a lot of contributors. If you look at Chef today, there's a lot more consumers than there are contributors to the project. And if you look at Habitat, it's mostly contributors right now, not a whole lot of consumers. And so as communities evolve, we expect that mix to change. And Inspect today is kind of in the middle of those two.
This Hugometer has come a long way.
This Hugometer has come a long way. Now we not only measure where and how often those hugs are happening, but also the intensity level of those hugs.
I mean, you got to be careful though, because if you have a meetup and you're serving beer, it could be a chugometer.
It could be a chugometer, absolutely.
You got to be careful.
Absolutely, and it's a fine balance, right?
Right.
You get together in a meetup, and sometimes you need that first or second beer to get the conversation going.
Right.
But when it turns into a chugometer, you might run into some dangerous territory.
Yeah, and you get outliers. There's a lot of hugs at this event. event over here.
There are a lot of hugs at this event.
That was a chug-a-meter event. So anyway.
Absolutely.
But InSpec, you were talking about InSpec.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us how you've been applying, your principles to the development of InSpec itself.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's really interesting is that when you look at the way that Chef fundamentally changed the way sysadmins do work, fundamentally changed the way we manage infrastructure. InSpec to me is an extension of that and a welcoming of other folks into our community. We're bringing in the security and compliance people. And the thing that's really interesting to me, since I've been with Chef and in this community for so long, is when I first joined this community, we saw a lot of resistance from sysadmins. No, this server only works the way it does because I built it by hand and I named it and I understand it. And eventually, of course, they understood that by capturing that as code and automating what they were doing, they actually gained superpowers. Well, we find that security and compliance professionals are along that exact same journey. Right now, they're saying, it's secure, I know it's secure because I clicked all the buttons or I executed all the commands. And they're starting to realize that the power of automation means not only can they do better at their job and have those superpowers, but they can also become a stronger advocate for those practices across the entire development lifecycle.
Wow. So what's your direction for community development, at Chef over the next 6-12 months? I expect you to just continue to focus on, the core principles that you have built into Chef, but is there a next development that you're looking to make, a next jump?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, like I said, we kind of have a community that's at 3 different phases of adoption between Chef, InSpec, and Habitat. And so it's really taking the lessons that we learned early on with Chef and applying those to Habitat, but then also taking the lessons that we're now learning, building a new project today versus 7 or 8 years ago. What lessons can we learn from building that community to bring back to the Chef community that's sort of, at a different stage in its life cycle? What are the things that we can learn there?
And so, I guess we're talking a lot about product,
yeah.
Right? But there's kind of overarching corporate themes, that you hear here. They're related to the product, such as continuous automation.
Yep.
Right. How do you help tell that story? Because that's kind of like that's a golden egg, really.
Sure.
Because continuous automation is something that almost everyone's trying to figure out.
Yep.
Right. So how do you manage, building out a theme like that as Vice President of Community Development?
Sure. I think that what we see as in many places as you're striving towards continuous automation, there's a couple of things that can happen there. First, just automation in and of itself. Forget the continuous part. Just the automation. It often starts at the grassroots, right? You have sysadmins, you have developers that start with that automation. But if it's only at the grassroots and doesn't make it beyond that, it's going to take way too long. The progress isn't going to be there. You're never going to get to full continuous automation that's driving real business outcomes, right? And so one of the things that we're doing within our community is we're trying to help those sysadmins, those security professionals, those application developers speak the language of business better. How do you understand what's happening within your business? How do you take those messages and really get to the why? Why are you automating? You're automating to move faster. You're automating to be more efficient. You're automating to reduce risk. That's the language that the business cares about. The business doesn't care how quickly did you provision a server. They care how quickly can you respond to customer demand. And we need to make sure that we're helping our community think in those terms and take those terms back to the table to increase the growth of that and to really get to continuous automation.
Nathen, thank you very much for taking some time to talk.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And to learn more about your approach to community development and how Chef is, building out its technologies and its platform and its overall story, with community development in mind. You guys really set a model for the rest of the industry. So.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Chef has been our sponsor for the podcast from ChefConf here in Austin, Texas. Learn more about Habitat, InSpec, and Chef's focus on continuous automation at chef.io. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Bakers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.